This is the state of garrisons in Rise of Kingdoms. Garrisons are extremely important to Rise of Kingdoms, and of course extremely important to the channel. So in today's video we're going to be going over the top garrison picks for the meta for each troop type, as well as leadership. On top of that, we're going to cover some of the transitional pairs you can use if you're transitioning from a field or rally player to garrisons. Without further ado, let's get started. First, let's talk infantry defenses. And really that conversation starts and ends with Gorgo. Gorgo is the infantry garrison right now, and her damage output and survivability is a pure testament to that. But with Gorgo you have some variety in options. If you're looking for a pure infantry defense, the top two pairings you're going to be looking at are Zenobia and Constantine. Zenobia is the more meta even keel commander pair because she's a traditional garrison who is still viable outside of Gorgo, while Constantine is one that's more for transition if you were going from a field player or a rally player to being a garrison, or if you are a long-time infantry player that has him maxed. That being said, if you do not already have him maxed, he's not worth the investment, just due to the fact that he's only covering one niche, while Zenobia covers the Gorgo niche, as well as several other niches with mixed troops and normal damage. If you're looking for a more mixed garrison, you have some options as well. Hera is the traditional option with good survivability, and while he does have skill damage, he also just has a lot of good tankiness, which isn't detracting from Gorgo's normal damage kit as much as some other commanders. Lapu is another option, but he has a more skilled damage heavy kit, so you do have some natural conflict with Gorgo's setup. So overall, you're going to see Gorgo with Hera a lot more than Gorgo with Lapu. If you're going for pair setups, I recommend going with Gorgo Zeno if you can manage it, but you want Zenobia to be primary due to the support tree being better than the defense tree. And if you're going for mixed, I would go with Gorgo Hera with Gorgo in the primary. Not because Gorgo's talent trees are particularly good, but because the infantry tree itself is very, very strong. Next, we're on to Cavalry, and of course we can't talk Cavalry garrisons without Eleanor. Eleanor is a huge player in the meta, and she has really, really great setups overall, with the only weakness being poor talent selection. So if you're looking for pure Cavalry, Jan Eleanor is the perfect option for you. You'll want Jan primary due to his skill tree, and you get good survivability 1v1, you get good survivability against Swarm, great damage output. Generally, there's not much to be disappointed in when you have Jan Eleanor. It trades very well from what we're seeing in our KvK right now, and it's just generally friendly to everything except for the fact that you need to have a majority cavalry. While you are not necessarily detracted like you would for an infantry defense like Gorgo Zeno, who needs only infantry to work well because of the whole of the line, you don't have that requirement, although if you have an infantry unit in your defense, they're just not pulling as much weight, rather than completely sinking your defense's ability to protect itself. If you are just now starting to play garrisons, you can go with Eleanor Nevsky, but it's not a very strong garrison versus Swarm, and you'll find that once you get Swarm down, you are not getting good trades. So it's something that you should only be using as an emergency measure if you're just starting to build garrisons. If you're looking for a mixed defense, Eleanor and Hera is a big one. Good survivability to tack onto a high damage kit is always something to be happy with. Tack on the fact that Heraclius has an AoE, and really he's a pretty great complement to Eleanor. Alternatively, if you're looking for something a little more high damage, Lapu with Eleanor makes a great pass defense or area where you can control the number of enemies attacking your defense. If you can manage to do that, Eleanor and Lapu will make a lot of headway 1v1 against most rallies in the game. So this is a good option too. But overall, you're going to want to use Jan Eleanor for cavalry only. And then if you're using mixed, you're going to want to use Eleanor with Hera. Next, we're on to archers, and this is probably the weakest of the three garrisons right now, not because Dido is a bad commander, but more because the newest garrisons have both been infantry and cavalry, So archers are naturally the oldest of the three garrison pairs. Dido is extremely solid. She has good 1v1 damage. She has a good debuff. And really the only thing is she could be weak to swarm in some situations. So if you're going for a pure archer defense, really the big one is Liang. And whether you are transitioning from field or rally to garrisons, or you're just building garrisons as you go, Dido Liang does a lot of damage. And it's something that has to be respected. You have good AoE area denial. You have pretty decent survivability, especially as far as archer defenses are concerned. And your 1v1 damage is nothing to turn your nose up to either. If you're looking for a more mixed friendly defense, you can go with Hera, but you do have some natural conflict in the fact that the overall reduction in normal damage taken by Dido requires all archers, while Hera's requires there to be all mixed troops instead. But that being said, you can get 20% in a pure archer defense if you have all archers between the 10% that Dido gets and the 10% that Hera has on its own. Or you run 3 different unit types and you can get 30% normal damage reduction from Hera, which is part of what makes him so viable. If you're looking for a high damage output, you could also go with Lapu, but just like the other two pairings we're talking about with Infantry and Cavalry, you're much weaker to swarm, but you have higher 1v1 damage output. And if you can support the garrison, the AoE damage will take a chunk out of the 1 or 2 swarmers if you're getting swarmed by 1 or 2 targets. But if you're getting swarmed by 10 or 15, you just don't have the survivability and your trades end up going south pretty quickly. Last but certainly not least, we are on to leadership defenses, and this comes down to 3 major commanders: Hera, Lapu, and YSS. How you set up these pairs is going to be a preference based on how you want to play your defense. But all 3 of these require you to build the leadership gear, because then you can use whatever units at whatever proportions. As long as you have 3 or more unit types, this will work. First, no matter what, you're going to want to use Hera. Either primary or secondary, depending on what your other commander is. He's just too good in damage, too good in survivability to not use. On top of the fact that you have a 30% normal damage reduction in a swarm heavy meta, you pretty much have to be using him. If you were looking for higher damage output, at the cost of being maybe a little less survivable, Lapu is your answer. In this case, you'll want Lapu primary for the skill tree. And in this case, you'll do a lot more damage, but you will be somewhat vulnerable to swarm, although you will give a lot of damage back as well when you are swarmed. So it's something where you take more deads, but you probably give a lot more as well. However, if you're looking for something more survivable and able to just stall out an enemy, Hera with YSS is a great option. In this case, you'll want Hera primary because the talent trees are basically the same, and the talent setups are basically the same, so you'll want the better commander first to have the shield up more often. So this will give you an option that's survivable. That being said, both do require you to build leadership gear, so keep that in mind when you do this, because if you just build a troop-specific gear, you then have to run a majority of that troop to get the value out of the gear, and gear is a huge driver of trades in Rise of Kingdoms. But with that, we'll wrap up our discussion on garrisons. This is by no means comprehensive. I just wanted to cover the most meta-viable commander pairings that are in the game right now. And if you're looking to build any other pairings based on what you have, just take these scales of what they're good at and what commanders tend to do well, and try to match up what you have to fit that playstyle. For example, if you're looking for a tankier commander, find tankier garrisons that you do have expertise. But let me know in the comments, is there a pairing that you like that you think is super underrated? Let me know in the comments. If you want to see another video topic covered, let me know down there as well. But as always, good luck, fight well, and I'll see you on the battlefield.